Hey, what's going on, guys? Today I'm exploring Yellowstone National Park, and it is absolutely incredible. There are few places that make you think of the Wild West more than Yellowstone National Park. I mean, this place is absolutely incredible. Like, if you haven't gone here already, you have to come out here to Montana and Wyoming. It is incredibly cool. There are so many amazing animals out there. There's bison, elk, moose, wolves, and then of course there's all these geothermal geysers and fumaroles out there, because if you guys didn't know, Yellowstone National Park is actually on a gigantic supervolcano. And well, this is the first time I ever went out there, but it was so incredibly cool. Now, I didn't actually see that many animals. I only really saw bison and elk, but before we get on to those, I just want to show you guys the incredibly cool geothermal vents, because those things are absolutely incredible. Like, they're so beautiful, and they're pretty much like nothing you've ever seen. It looks like something from a movie. It is so completely crazy. So there are 5 different types of geothermal features that can be found in Yellowstone. The first one is fumaroles, and that's what this is. It's basically like a vent with steam coming out of it. It's not a full-on geyser that's just spewing boiling water into the air. It's more just steam coming out of a small pocket that's come out of the earth. Now, the second type is called mud pots, and these are kind of like bubbly, boily puddles of extremely hot, bubbling, boiling water. And, well, these are actually kind of hard to find, and I only found, I think, 1 or 2, but they are pretty interesting. They almost look like something from a science fiction movie, because it's like these huge bubbles coming out of this like big puddle, and it's very bizarre indeed. Then after that, there is, of course, geysers. Now, geysers are pretty much, alright, so basically water will come in from the water cycle, boil in the inner part of the earth, and then it'll spew out from the small hole that is, a small opening in the Earth's crust. So if you think about it, like there's a chamber at the center of the Earth, maybe not the center of the Earth, but pretty far down, probably in the asthenosphere, and then it'll go up into the small hole and spew boiling water into the air. That's basically what a geyser is. And geysers are pretty cool, and they're probably the most well-known and famous of all geothermal features in Yellowstone National Park. Alright, next up, there is, of course, hot springs. Now, these are my favorite kinds of geothermal features because they're really, really surreal. They're basically these huge pools of water with just steam coming out of them. That's pretty much all they are. They're just really, like, in my opinion, they're just super cool. Like, especially the prismatic hot springs, which you're seeing right now. These are so cool. This is probably my favorite part of the whole trip, honestly, because the steam will go like into your face, and I was wearing glasses and it was just fogging up my glasses. It was crazy. It was super cool. Finally, the last geothermal feature is called Travertine terraces, or basically just terrace hot springs. They're basically hot springs, however they're made of limestone, so they have sort of levels on the side of like cliffs and stuff. And that's what Mammoth Hot Springs is, which is what you're seeing right now. Alright, so I'm here at the Mammoth Hot Springs. Now, it might look kind of dead, right? Like it's kind of just these gray rocks with sort of these cool stalactite formations. But it's not exactly looking too, geysery, blowing up. But actually, this is an ever-changing rock formation, geothermal vent, basically. And it's a hot spring, and it's sort of just, there's a lot of bubbling water with a lot of steam coming out of it at the top of this mountain, which I think we're gonna go to. Yeah, at the top there's like this orangish, yellowish, oh, look over here, look, that's sort of like a glimpse of the color of the top
And yeah, it might look like this hot spring is just sort of, you know, dead, but it's actually an ever-changing, very, very rapidly changing, you know, geothermal spring. So it's really quite marvelous, and it's one of the coolest places to find creatures.
And as you could see, it was just like bizarre. Like, it looked so cool. And also, one of the cool things is you guys might think that these geothermal, boiling, hot, acidic features are extremely inhospitable. Like, no animal could possibly even go near these, right? Well, actually, the reason that many of these geothermal features have such bizarre colors is because there are all these bacteria that live in these geothermal features. And all these bacteria are called extremophiles. So think of it like, well, I mean, they live in extreme conditions, right? So they're going to be called extreme, and then ophile is, I think, Latin for living. So living in extreme places. That's basically what they are. So they're these bacteria that live in extremely hot or cold or bizarre places. And these bacteria, they live in fumaroles and hot springs and terraces. All of these geothermal features include, like, to some extent, they include these extremophiles. And you guys can probably see that some of them are like yellow or orange or even like blue in color. That's all because of these extremophiles. And you might think, well, okay, sure, maybe those bacteria live there, but nothing else would possibly venture near. Actually, we saw some killdeer living in Mammoth Hot Springs. Now, killdeer, as you guys can see right here, are these small little plover birds. And they're very, very, very widespread throughout the United States. And we actually saw some here on these Mammoth Hot Springs, and they were pretty cool. They were just chilling out. They were probably eating the bacteria, to be honest, and they were just having a good time. So even though it might seem completely inhospitable and deadly, it's actually a pretty safe place for some animals. Now, obviously, if we went on a geyser or a fumarole or a hot spring, we'd probably burn our flesh to death. But there's some animals that can live in these conditions, which is super cool. However, some of the larger animals, like bison and elk, they can't live in these conditions. However, we still saw plenty of them.
Okay, I'm about to show you guys something kind of insane. Check this out. Look at these gigantic bison patties. I think this is bison. These are just ginormous bison turds. And that is huge. I mean, as you can see, it's got some granular mixture in it because they're herbivorous, so. This is a dried one right here. They're just everywhere right here. These bison patties are pretty big. Biggest turds I've ever seen. So that's pretty crazy.
So in case you guys didn't already get the hint, there's quite a few bison in Yellowstone National Park.
Alright, there's a bison right here. So this is an American bison. Bison. Obviously, I showed you guys the big bush patties earlier.
Okay, all joking aside though, it's actually really good that I saw so many bison in Yellowstone, because bison are supposed to live here. If you guys didn't know, bison actually roamed all of western and central, and maybe even parts of eastern North America, and they basically just roamed the Great Plains and the Midwest thousands of years ago, in the Ice Age, pre-colonial times. There was herds and herds of thousands and thousands of bison. But then Native Americans started hunting a lot of them, but that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was habitat encroachment by European settlers in the mid-1800s. Sort of made it so that the bison's native range was beginning to turn into farmland and buildings and towns and cities in the Midwest. And pretty much now, Bison are pretty much eradicated from all of the United States, except for a few populations in the Midwest, many of them reintroduced. So it's actually really good to have seen this many bison, because it means that they're making a fantastic comeback in their population number, which is phenomenal, because now there are some in Canada, but mostly they are very, very rare nowadays, because people have basically just destroyed all their habitat, and it's really good to see so many bison. Now, a lot of times there's this one thing that people do when they see bison that really gets on my nerves, and they call them buffalo. Now, buffalo and bison are not the same thing. Now, here is some footage of a bison, as you guys have been seeing, but this is footage of a buffalo. So as you guys can see, they're pretty different. The buffalo has much longer, more wide horns, whereas bison's horns are very, very small. Also, buffaloes have more broad shoulders, whereas bison have sort of like a huge hump on their back. They're very different looking, and they have completely different ranges. Bison live in North America and Europe, while buffalo live in Africa and Asia. And also, although they are in the same family, the cow family, bovines or bovids, they're actually quite different. So calling a bison a buffalo, it's like calling a badger an otter. They're not really the same thing. They might be in the same family, but they're really not the same thing. So when you hear somebody say, "I just ate some buffalo jerky," they're probably talking about bison. Don't get confused. And also, if you want to be a jerk and correct them, you can just say, "Actually, it's bison." But I've done that to many people, and well, let's just say they weren't exactly too happy. So these bison, they were kind of just roaming all around Yellowstone. It's fantastic to see wild bison, because like I said earlier, their habitat has been destroyed. So they were just sort of grazing, you know. There was even some of them near the hot springs and the geysers themselves, which is really interesting. And all around, they were just having a great time. Really, the only predators of these bison is wolves, maybe bears, and of course humans. But most of the time when we eat bison, it's farmed, so that's good. And if you go to Yellowstone, you have to stay pretty far away from these bison, because they can be actually extremely dangerous. They can charge at you, and they can actually run at 40 miles per hour and jump 6 feet in the air. And even though their horns are small, they can still inflict insanely dangerous wounds. So never ever try to go up too close to a bison. You could actually die. So the last creature I want to talk about is the elk. Now, in Yellowstone, we actually didn't see that many elk, and we only saw them at the very, very, very end of our trip, actually in the commercial town sector of Yellowstone, because there's like a small part of Yellowstone that has like hotels and restaurants and stuff, and that's where we saw most of the elk. And they were sort of just chilling out, as you can see here, sort of eating the grass, just kind of chilling out by the road. And these elk used to live all over the United States, and they actually also live in Asia. But like bison, their range has been reduced to the Rocky Mountains, Canada, and some other parts of the Midwest. They used to live in the eastern United States where I live. However, sadly, they've been extirpated from that region. And also, these elk are pretty big for deer. They're actually a species of deer. And the moose is actually the biggest species, but they're pretty far up there too. They're pretty large. And male elk obviously have massive horns. They're called bucks, and they have like these huge antlers. And obviously in the mating season and the rutting season, they will fight with the other males with these massive antlers. And just like all deer, they shed their antlers every year. That's one thing that a lot of people don't know, is that deers actually shed their antlers, while antelopes and bison and, you know, cows and that sort of thing, they keep their horns their whole lives, while deers shed them once a year. So yeah, these elk are pretty cool. The only real predators of these elk are coyote packs, maybe mountain lions, and some bears and wolves. Now, I know for a fact that in the wintertime, a lot of elks can get sick because there's not enough food, and many times wolf packs will prey on those sick elks, and that's actually a pretty easy meal for them with a lot of food. So yeah, these elks are very, very necessary part of the ecosystem. They help feed the predators, and they're also grazers, so they help with the grass. It's very interesting. These elk are pretty cool. I wish I saw more of them, but hey, at least I saw some. It was very cool. So I didn't see that many predators. In fact, I didn't see any big predatory mammals, but I did see the bison, I did see the elk, and of course I saw all those geothermal features. And it was just a fantastic, phenomenal time in Yellowstone National Park. Like I said in the beginning of the video, if you haven't been here and you have the money, please, it'll be an experience you'll never forget. Come out to the west and go check it out. It is super cool. And yeah, hopefully I'm going to be making another video in 2 weeks when I go to my grandparents' house in New Hampshire. Now, I've already made an episode in New Hampshire a year ago. However, I'm going to try to make another one, this time hopefully seeing if I can catch some other creatures. I know that there's some snapping turtles and some frogs that I haven't showed you guys that I'm definitely dying to catch. After that, I still have some plans over the summer of things I might be able to do, but we'll see. I mean, it's May right now, so I'm not 100% certain. I still have to get through Regents in school. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, definitely leave it a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe. And see you guys next time. Peace out. Goodbye.